In the heart of the Arizona desert, under a sky vast and unyielding, lay the Apache village. Its people moved with the grace of history and the strength of the rugged landscape that surrounded them. Among them was Nate, a woman known for her indomitable spirit and piercing gaze that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Her name echoed in whispers around campfires, alongside legends of fearless warriors and spirits of the land. Yet, whispers were all she had left, as the path laid out for her was both revered and feared. It was the season when the sun bore down mercilessly, painting the earth in hues of red and gold. The elders gathered, their voices deep and resonant, speaking of traditions older than the towering cliffs and vast skies. They declared that Nate was to marry Chato, a notorious bandit leader. The union was a tactical move aimed at welding peace, a merging of strength to deter those who would dare threaten the Apache's claim to their ancestral lands. Nate listened, her heart at war with her duty, feeling the inevitable tide of history pulling her towards a life she never wished for. Cliff Starred was a man whose eyes held no warmth, a man whose very name caused silence to descend like a shroud. He moved with an air of arrogance, dressed in the swagger of a man who feared little and trusted none. Nate had heard the tales of his exploits, tales woven with blood and fear. Her resolve began to harden, a surprising defiance stirring in her heart. The thought of her days bound to his shadow, her existence melded to his will, tightened the knot in her stomach. The night before the dawn that was to bind her future in chains, Nate retreated to her sacred place, a hidden ledge that overlooked the sprawling desert. The wind whispered secrets known only to the ancients, and the stars blinked down with a cold indifference. Clutching a small leather pouch that held her grandmother's cherished talisman, she sought guidance, feeling the weight of ancestral eyes upon her. Her grandmother had been a woman of fiery determination, a trait Nate saw reflected in every choice she now questioned. "I will not be a pawn in their game," Nate whispered into the night, her voice carrying the weight of a nation's daughters who longed for paths of their choosing. The idea of leaving everything she had known was terrifying, yet a strange sense of calm enveloped her. It was the peace of knowing she would not be imprisoned by unwanted vows, the certainty that the wild expanse of sand and sky would hold her true. As dawn broke, igniting the horizon with a searing brilliance only the desert could conjure, Nate gathered her few possessions. Her heart pounded with the rhythm of finality. The soles of her feet whispered goodbye to the earth that had cradled her since childhood, each step forward a pulse of defiance. She glanced back once, taking in the silhouette of her village against the rising sun, a place that would forever hold the echoes of laughter and tears. Before turning away, she walked into the arms of the desert, her heart a cacophony of fear and liberation, where the familiar receded like a mirage. Nate embraced the solitude, feeling a connection to the land that mirrored her own untamed spirit. With each stride, she left behind the constraints of expectation, stepping into the unknown with a fierce determination that tasted of both exile and emancipation. Caught between the legacy of her ancestors and the desires of her own heart, Nate moved forward, the sands of Arizona stretching infinitely before her. This was where tradition met rebellion, and in her heart, where hope met the infinite possibilities of freedom. The Arizona sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the endless expanse of desert. She walked alone, her feet sinking into the soft, shifting sands. Each step a gentle defiance against the vast emptiness that surrounded her. The solitude was both daunting and liberating. Here, in the vast wilderness, she was free from whispers and judgments, yet bound by the need to survive. Night had begun to cloak the desert by the time she discovered him. The cowboy lay crumpled against the base of a large saguaro, his face a mask of pain and exhaustion. The sight of another human, vulnerable and alone, tugged at something buried deep within her, an ancient instinct to nurture and protect. Approaching with caution, her instincts honed by years under the open sky, she crouched beside him. His eyes flickered open, deep blue pools of pain and gratitude. For a moment, they simply regarded each other, two souls adrift in a sea of sand. "Name's Dan," he rasped, voice as dry as the desert wind. She offered a nod, a gesture of truce. "Kayla, what's a woman like you doing out here?" He was straightforward, his curiosity apparent even in his weakened state. A part of her admired his tenacity. It mirrored her own. "Escaping," she replied, offering him a small drink from her canteen. "And you?" A rueful smile twisted his lips, the lines on his face deepening. "Got caught up with the wrong crowd. Needed a new start. Guess fate had other plans." Silence enveloped them, as tangible as the cooling desert air. She set to work tending to his injuries, a nasty gash across his leg and a bruise that colored his side a sickening shade of purple. Grimacing, he watched her with a gaze that spoke of gratitude and unspoken questions. For days, they journeyed together, the desert their only witness. Slowly, the barrier of their silence cracked. In the hush of twilight and the gentle lull of the night winds, they shared fragments of their pasts, each story a thread, weaving them closer, binding them to a shared present born from necessity. Kayla spoke of her tribe, the traditions she had turned from, and the expectations she had refused to meet. Dan, in turn, shared tales of lost loves and errant wanderings, a soul shaped by roads less traveled and dreams deferred. One evening, as the horizon blazed with the dying colors of day, Dan posed a question that lingered like the fading sunlight. "Do you think we're meant to find our way back, or to forge a new path altogether?" She considered his words, the truth of her journey resonating deeper now. "Perhaps both," she replied, voice soft yet firm. "We are shaped by where we come from, but it's up to us to choose which roads to follow." Their companionship was no longer about survival alone. It had transformed into a union of kindred spirits, each finding solace in the presence of the other. There was a silent understanding, a deep-seated respect for the strength and resilience they both harbored. Then, the storm came, a monstrous, swirling tempest that swept across the desert with a fury that defied imagination. Sand and wind lashed at them, the world transformed into a chaotic dance of elements that sought to swallow them whole. Huddled together against the howling wind, they fought to keep moving, to forge onward through the relentless storm. In the darkness, Kayla whispered words of encouragement, urging Dan to hold on, to fight with every ounce of strength he had left. At the storm's height, a sudden calm enveloped them. In that moment of reprieve, Kayla felt a shift within her, an awakening stronger than the desert winds could ever be. Here, in the heart of the storm, she felt her spirit soar, unbroken and indomitable. When dawn finally broke and the storm passed, they emerged from the desert desolation changed. Dan, his injuries healing, stood taller, his spirit renewed by the challenge they had overcome together. Kayla, however, found herself transformed, not only by the storm, but by the realization of the warrior within. Their journey, woven with threads of hardship and triumph, had led them to a future unburdened by the ghosts of their pasts. As they stepped forward into the new day, it was with the understanding that their paths, though separate, were forever entwined by the trials they had faced together. And so, the desert bore witness to an unlikely alliance, two lives reshaped by the sands of time and the winds of destiny. In the heart of desolation, they had found something rare and precious, hope. In the midst of the desert's vastness, where the horizon seemed to blur into a perpetual expanse of sand and sky, the quiet symphony of the wind played its eternal melody. The sun, a blazing orb of unrelenting heat, cast its glaring eye upon the land, daring life to persist in its relentless gaze. Armed with only her resourceful spirit and the hesitant companionship of the wounded cowboy, the Apache woman, known simply as Kashina, confronted the looming tempest. The cowboy, named Samuel, rested against the base of a weathered rock, his breathing shallow, his leg bandaged with hastily torn strips of cloth. His rugged features, usually hardened by the sun and the callous life of a wanderer, revealed a vulnerability in this desolate landscape. Kashina, ever mindful of the signs left by the desert winds, scanned the horizon for any hint of the coming storm. The sky, previously a cerulean expanse dotted with clouds, darkened with ominous intent. The once gentle breeze intensified into a restless gust, swirling the sand with increasing ferocity. Kashina's instincts, honed by the teachings of her ancestors, awakened within her an acute awareness. She sensed the desert's wrath gathering its forces, ready to unleash its fury upon them. "We need shelter," she said, her voice remaining steady despite the rising tension in the air. Her words were carried by the wind, reaching Samuel with a clarity that defied the storm's growing clamor. Samuel nodded, his eyes revealing a burgeoning trust in her judgment. "Lead the way, Kashina." Together, they embarked upon an arduous trek toward a distant cluster of jagged rocks, their silhouettes barely visible against the swirling sands. Each step required a concerted effort, their resolve tested by the oppressive weight of the impending storm. As the wind howled with increasing intensity, the desert seemed to come alive, a formidable adversary seeking to engulf them in its unyielding embrace. As they neared the rocks, the storm reached its crescendo. A sudden gust, fiercer than any before, knocked Samuel to the ground. Kushina rushed to his side, her hands finding his, pulling him to his feet with a strength that belied her slender frame. "We're close," she urged, her voice commanding and soothing all at once. Within moments, they reached the shelter of the rocks. It was a humble refuge, a crevice in the land's rugged face, yet it promised safety from the storm's onslaught. Inside, the world outside muted to a muffled roar, a cacophony of nature's power tempered by the refuge they found. With what little light remained, Kushina and Samuel settled into their temporary sanctuary. The storm, relentless in its fury, seemed intent on tearing apart the very fabric of the landscape. In the dim confines of the rocky alcove, however, there lay a moment of calm, a respite from the chaos beyond. As night descended, cloaking the desert in shadows, Kushina and Samuel spoke in hushed tones, their words interwoven with the sounds of the tempest. They shared stories of their past, their voices mingling with the wind, carrying their dreams and regrets into the void. Samuel spoke of the frontier life, of lands crossed and the enduring search for something elusive, perhaps freedom, perhaps redemption. Kushina listened intently, her gaze fixed on the flickering light from the small fire they had managed to kindle. "When the storm passes," Samuel mused, "what then, Kushina? Where does your path lead?" Kushina pondered, her thoughts turned inward, to the journey that had led her here. Her defiance against the life others sought to impose upon her had cast her into the desert's arms a trial by sand and solitude. "I was banished," she began, her voice carrying the weight of her past. "But within this exile, I found myself. This storm, it tests us, shapes us. When it ends, as all storms do, I will return not as what I was meant to be, but as who I choose to be." There, beneath the starlit canopy veiled by swirling sands, a profound understanding blossomed between them, a bond forged in adversity, an alliance born from necessity and nurtured by shared purpose. As the storm's fury waned with the coming dawn, its ferocious energy spent, the desert regained its serene focus. Kushina and Samuel emerged from their sanctuary, the world around them washed anew by the storm's passage. In the soft light of morning, Kushina gazed out across the endless sand. The tempest had left its mark, altering the landscape, yet the desert endured, forever changed yet fundamentally the same. Within her heart, an unwavering resolve took shape. The storm, fierce in its power, had not vanquished them. Instead, it had revealed to Kushina her unyielding spirit, honed by trial, destined to transform the world she would return to. As she faced the horizon, her path clear, Kushina knew her journey was far from over. Her return would not fulfill an old promise of marriage, but a promise to herself, a vow to reshape her destiny and inspire change. With Samuel at her side, she began the journey back, each step a testament to the resilience born of the desert, resilience that would see her transform from a banished bride to a warrior of the Wild West. The desert had been cruel and unrelenting, its vastness swallowing everything in shifting sands and scorching heat. Yet as the storm passed, the land offered a stark, tranquil beauty, a reflection of the profound transformation that had occurred within her. This woman, once guided by the echoes of tradition, now walked a path forged in independence and courage, her heart and spirit forged anew. In the aftermath of the tempest, the cowboy, named Luke, lay by her side, the dawn revealing the contours of their struggle etched into the earth. Their shared ordeal in the storm had stripped away layers of their past, bearing the raw, unyielding essence of who they had become. Luke's eyes, once shadowed by past ghosts, looked upon her with a newfound clarity, his own burdens lightened by their mutual survival. As they sat together, weary but undefeated, the woman recounted tales of her upbringing, the rich tapestry of Apache culture, colored with honor and legacy. She spoke of the traditions that shaped her, of the expectations that had once bound her as tightly as any chains. Each word was an unburdening, a step further away from the obedient bride she had been expected to become. Luke shared his own story, a nomad of the Wild West by necessity, not choice. The son of settlers, he had wandered from town to town, seeking a place that felt like home. His path crossed with hers in an act of serendipity, a chance encounter in the land of the lost and forgotten. Together, they pieced together a new understanding of identity, one not dictated by the past, but carved by personal truth and mutual respect. Their journey was marked by trials that tested their resolve and determination. Miles of barren desert landscape lay before them, the unforgiving terrain demanding both physical endurance and mental fortitude. They foraged and rationed, each day bringing new challenges that they tackled with growing confidence. Luke's skills with the lasso matched her knowledge of the land, her keen instincts balanced by his strength. During their travels, they stumbled upon an abandoned settlement, remnants of lives once lived scattered among crumbling brickworks and sun-bleached timbers. Here, they found refuge in a small cabin, its four walls offering a temporary reprieve. She took to repairing the cracked windows with willow barks and cactus fiber, while Luke fished from a nearby stream. Their survival now built upon shared labor and silent understanding. One evening, as the sky blazoned in brilliant hues of orange and violet, they sat by the fire, the crackling flames casting flickering shadows against the walls. In this tranquil moment, Luke asked her name, having realized that through their trials, such a simple exchange had been forgotten in the chaos of survival. Her name was she revealed, spoken softly yet with a palpable strength. In return, Luke shared with her the hopes he once held and the man he aspired to be before the West changed him. It was here that they found their deepest connection, an unspoken promise of understanding that transcended words. As the weeks turned into months, the cabin became a cherished sanctuary, a place where strength was honed and dreams reconciled with reality. Embraced her metamorphosis. No longer tethered to a prescribed destiny, she donned the armor of a warrior, not one forged of steel, but of convictions and aspirations. The day of departure loomed with promise and uncertainty. However, knew she could not remain. Her people awaited her return, paths unwritten, futures yet to be crafted. With Luke by her side, she journeyed back to her tribe, her heart both heavy and light, a paradox shaped by love and loyalty. Upon their arrival, the village greeted her with a mixture of hesitation and curiosity. Gone was the young woman cast out with whispered judgments. Instead, they saw the warrior. She stood before them, not as a bride-to-be, but as a catalyst for change. Her voice, once silenced by tradition, now rang clear and true, demanding transformation and renewal. Eyes met those of her father, their silent understanding transcending words. The confrontation many anticipated was absent. In its place was respect, hard-earned and undeniable. The stories she shared, lessons from her trials, wove into the fabric of their society a tapestry of progress and liberty. Luke, content in his role in journey, saw his place within this community as that of an ally and friend. His wanderer's heart found solace in purpose, and though he knew his path might one day lead him away again, in this moment he rested easy beside her. Together, and Luke stood at the precipice of a new dawn, a fledgling kinship binding frontier and tribe. The bygone echoes of fate and defiance became the pillars of their legacy, for within the resilience of the banished Apache bride was a testament to the indefatigable spirit of all who dared to defy the convention in pursuit of their truth. The desert sun bled into the horizon, painting the vast expanse of the Wild West in hues of red and gold. Each step toward her village was a reconciliation, a melding of her past and the fiercely newfound independence she now carried. The winds whispered secrets of old, but she followed her own path, heart steadied by the conviction of her choices. She was no longer the timid bride-to-be, but a warrior forged in the furnace of adversity. As she approached the outskirts, the village seemed smaller, as though her absence had stretched time. The elders gathered, their faces masks of stone, embodying the weight of tradition and expectation. She stood before them, unyielding, her eyes meeting theirs with a silent challenge. The chief, a man whose every word was law, spoke first. "You return, child, not as we expected. Explain your absence and defiance." Her breath was steady, her voice clear. "I return not to be bound by marriage, but to share what freedom has taught me. I have seen a world beyond the confines of rituals and rules, a world where one's worth isn't measured by obedience, but by strength and character." A murmur spread like a ripple through the crowd, a mixture of curiosity and outrage. Tradition was the backbone of these people, an edifice not easily swayed. She understood the struggle between reverence for the old ways and her vision for a more egalitarian future. The chief's eyes narrowed, but a flicker of respect was there, barely perceptible. "And what would you have us do? Abandon our customs, our beliefs, for the whims you bring back from the desert?" "The world is changing," she said, her voice calm yet insistent. "The desert showed me that survival is only possible when one adapts. Our people can thrive if we embrace change, allowing each person to contribute their strengths, not stifle them under the weight of tradition." Her words wove through the people, awakening dormant thoughts and ambitions. She spoke of the cowboy in the storm, of how they survived by trusting and learning from one another, despite being strangers. Her journey wasn't just one of physical survival, but a deep transformation that could ignite a spark for collective growth. One elder, ancient and wise, nodded thoughtfully. "Tell us more of this storm, child. What can we learn from it?" She recounted the tale, her words painting a vivid picture of the howling winds, relentless and unforgiving. Each trial had been a lesson, the importance of adaptability, unity, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. "We are like the sands in that storm," she concluded. "Each grain alone is nothing, but together we can shape and be shaped, strong enough to withstand any force." Silence stretched, a poignant tension thickening the air. The people listened, minds and hearts in a delicate dance between what was and what could be. The chief, though silent, was profoundly moved. The defiance, once perceived as rebellion, now whispered the promise of a new era. "Your words touch a truth, one many have felt but none dared voice," the elder admitted, his gaze sweeping across those gathered. "Perhaps it is time we listen, truly listen, and allow ourselves to grow beyond what we have always known." In that moment, she realized she was not alone in her dreams. The nightmares of the wedding and the relentless pressure of expectations dissipated, replaced by the solid, bright promise of a future where she was an equal voice among many. The journey back to her people hadn't ended. It was only the beginning of a path towards change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that danced like spirits across the land, the village gathered, not as a tribe chained by tradition, but as a community embarking on a new journey. In her heart, the exiled bride, now warrior, found peace, for she was finally home, not just in place, but in purpose. The path of change stretched infinitely in front of her, and with each step forward, she left an indelible mark on the landscape of her people's history. This was not just her story, it was theirs as well, a tapestry of courage and defiance, woven tightly by the ties of kinship and destiny. As the night embraced the land once more, she knew the fire of their newfound freedom would light the way, a beacon of transformation for generations to come. Throughout the tribes and settlements across the rust-colored expanse of Arizona, whispers of her return stirred as the first warm winds of spring. She, the banished Apache bride, had walked back into the lives of those who had once turned their backs on her, not as the demure bride they expected, but as a force of change, a surging river challenging the banks that sought to contain it. The sun cast long shadows as she stood on the margins of her village, her heart a tumult of emotions. She carried with her not just stories of survival, but a vision of possibility. Her spirit was an ageless echo of the land itself, raw, unyielding, and life-giving. As she approached, the familiar scent of sagebrush and mesquite whispered memories long buried of childhood and kinship. But now, even the earth beneath her felt different, vibrating with the tension she could sense in every watchful eye, every cautious step taken around her. The drums started slowly, like the first hesitant raindrops of a brewing storm. They resonated in her chest, stirring a command hidden deep within her. Her people gathered, drawn by a mix of curiosity, reverence, and doubt. The elders, cloaked in tradition, yet marked by the passage of many seasons, held their counsel. The young warriors stood stoic, some eager to challenge, others to learn. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was both new and ancient, a river of words flowing with sincerity and strength. "I returned not to fulfill promises forged in a past that no longer holds," she began, meeting the eyes of those who most resisted change, "but to awaken within us the courage to forge anew." As she spoke of unity and strength in divergence, the desert winds picked up, swirling dust around her like ghosts of the past, seeking to veil the truth she laid bare. Yet, her voice rang clear, cutting through time-worn fears and igniting sparks in eyes that had dimmed with despair. Her words painted vivid scenes of the storm, no longer a destroyer, but a crucible that had tempered her spirit. She recounted the harrowing days when survival was her soul, focused the lessons learned beneath star-strewn skies where she and the cowboy, both pariahs in their own rights, had forged a bond stronger than the chains of duty and expectation. The storms that rage within can unite just as fiercely as they divide, she intoned, weaving her tale into the fabric of her people's story. She offered not just a voice of dissent, but a call to reconsider alliances, to see strength in choosing paths less trodden. Conflict brewed as some elders hearkened back to adherence, warning of the perils of straying too far from the path laid by ancestors. Voices rose in fervor, the air thick with words unspoken and stress unrelieved. But it was here, at this breaking point, that a spark of unity flickered into life. One of the seasoned warriors, whose silence had been far-reaching, stepped forward. His voice bore both the brittle edge of age and the undeniable weight of truth. Outsider or savior, warrior or exile, she has shown us what it means to be unyielding. His words carried across the crowd, bridging gaps of doubt with threads of shared experience and newfound hope. Gradually, resolve replaced reluctance, as the villagers began to see the endless sands anew, not as barren wastelands, but as a testament to what could endure and thrive against all odds. Her rebellion, once a lone act of defiance, was kindling a change as inevitable as the shifting desert winds. By the time the sun hung heavy in the twilight sky, her story had woven itself into their own, a tapestry of promise, strength, and direction. The elders, though still cautious, were swayed by a deeper understanding, seeing the promise of a future that honored the past while embracing the present. That night, under a cosmos swirled in silver and shadow, the villagers gathered not in apprehension but in celebration, a recognition of newfound unity. Drums echoed not as shackles of tradition, but as a heartbeat of shared existence, resonating with the promise of dawn. As the embers of the shared fire crackled and danced, there, amidst faces once closed to her, she finally found her place, not as a bride or an outcast, but as a warrior, a leader, and most importantly, as part of a people ready to greet the storm together.